Hello, and go after. Welcome to Sportsball Razzifarai, a show that provides answers to viewer-supplied questions from a modern-day Celtic Norse shaman here in South Central Alaska. Be sure to tune in each Wednesday night when the shaman answers questions from viewers like you. Come on, let's hear what the shaman is answering this week. Day. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Like that.
Hello and happy Wootens Day to you. I hope today has gone amazingly well for you and that you have obtained the energy that you were really looking for today. Firstly and foremost, as always, I want to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, subscribed us on any of the platforms, whether it be the video side or the audio side. We very much appreciate you and ask for your continued support. If you haven't had a chance to mash that like, follow, subscribe button, please do so. Be sure to ring the bell for notifications here on YouTube, and by all means, you'll get notified each week when Sportsball plays, and be sure to follow us on Belly Sneak every weekday morning that you get some information. Hopefully that gives you some energy to get through your day. Firstly and foremost, I want to give a huge shout out to my friends and family at New Reality TV. NewRealityTV.com is a streaming channel with a plethora of perspectives on our spiritual journeys. Offers everyone something that resonates within them that can provide them with the tools they need to obtain or maintain a better mental space. For those of you who don't know, Sportsball happens each Wednesday evening, and it is an answer to a question that you've asked via our website, and you can visit that website at northwhispers.com. There you can scroll all the way to the bottom, look to the left. There you'll see a big orange button that says Ask Me a Question. Pound on that button, ask your question, and if I decide to make a show from your question, which we do each week, you get a free t-shirt. We'll send it to you, no cost to you. You get a free t-shirt to wear to show your support. So please, for those of you who have any questions in your spiritual path, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out, right? So finally, before I move on, I want to say, let's see, there it is, over here somewhere. There it is, way over here. There we go. For those of you who'd like to donate to support our cause here at the Alaska Ulfhefnar, please feel free to do so. You can do so at pay.akulfhefnar.com. There you can see the link in your lower corner. Tonight, beautiful question, Brian. Brian is asking, and really got to the crux of it when we talk about masculinity adapting to a spiritual journey. many times masculinity and the tough guy thing doesn't fit well with what many would construe to be our spiritual path being one of love, joy, peace, comfort, harmony, all of those things that we really want in our lives. And yet we're trying to be a badass, and how do those two worlds collide? Well, those two worlds actually work in perfect tandem with each other. They are coexistent very peacefully. Spirituality is simply the recognition of spiritual energy. It has nothing to do with any named individuals. So whether you decide that you want to go to church on Sunday and worship a Jesus or a Yahweh or Allah, or anyone, Zeus, Osiris, Othin, as I do, anyone, or even the Creator, which looks over us 24/7 and ensures that we grow in the right direction. So regardless who you're looking at, you're essentially looking to a higher power, or what you would construe as a higher power. But ultimately, they are simply other energy beings, no different than you, except in scale. So if you think about you being a charge of electricity floating around through the universe, there you go, woo, look at you go. A deity would simply involve more energy. Remember, the deities were formed back in the days when there wasn't anything else. There was a void. And these energy particles came together and bonded in such a way that they created a concentration, a focus that became self-aware. This self-aware, this consciousness, then would go on to begin to shed some of their energy. This energy would then ripple through the universe in much the same way that they did. So these little energy particles would come together with other energy particles, and they would form ultimately you and me and any other life form here, particularly here on Midgard. But there are bazillions, and I use that word sparingly, bazillions of other life forms, other spiritual entities who do not currently bond to a physical form, who are out there. They're just out there having fun, learning, growing, evolving in the way that they want. Okay, so back to those tough guys. Those tough guys want to go to church on Sunday. They want to worship their representation of a deity, whatever that looks like. That's fine. But here's the difference between what you would construe as being, I should say, where you fall off the path of a spiritual journey, is when we start interfering or influencing other people, others, based on, not on information. I'm simply giving you information. What you decide to do with it is completely up to you. But when I force you and say, oh, you can't be this, you can't measure to this bar until you do this thing, whatever this thing is, right? Or you believe this way. I won't let you meet this bar, right? This is where we fall off the rails of a spiritual path, and we become religious. Religion, in of itself, is not a bad thing. When we start forcing others, we're simply bullying or influencing others to change their belief to match yours, or else. Question mark. When we do that, we've fallen off the path. So, let's talk a minute about what is spirituality. Really, what is it? Well, spirituality, many think that it's this worship of a deity. And we have to do these certain movements, and we have to do these certain rituals, and we have to do these certain things and believe certain things. And that is not spirituality. Spirituality is simply the recognition of the energy that is all around us. It is in the earth, it is in the trees, it is in the grass, it is in the animals, it is in other people, and it's certainly in the deities, or the Creator, Mother Earth, all of these things. When we begin to step away from calling out named individuals And we begin to recognize this much larger thing of energy within the universe. Now we're talking more of a spiritual journey. We're getting away from a religion. Now, granted, you may do your practice. You may have this certain ritual that you want to do every day, and you feel good about it. And okay, you do this ritual or this practice every morning, and that's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. It doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make you more of a person. It makes you you. Congratulations, you're you. And that's the exciting part about being on our spiritual journey, is recognizing, firstly and foremost, that everyone's spiritual journey is different. We're all unique. We started in a different place. We had different environmental influences. We had different energy influences. We may have different ancestors that are communicating with us. So we have a plethora of things that are going to alter our journey in a different way. For those of you who don't know, my twin sons, are about to turn 30. They a couple of months away now. So we've had them for a while. All right. And I was there during their younger years as they grew up, and we used to have a hoot nanny of fun with them. They were, and they still are, wonderful men. Well, now they're wonderful men. Before they were wonderful boys. They were very, very smart, very, very talented, very independent individuals, and so loved them to death. But one of the things I really studied, and again, flashback, when I began my true shamanic journey, a lot of my life I reviewed, I looked back at, and kind of thought how things happened. And some of the things I remember is that the boys, my sons, grew up, they lived in the same house, but they had very different interests. Granted, one could influence the other, and they wind up, they were playmates for a very long time, obviously, being brothers. And they played with a lot of the same things, they had a lot of the same interests, but not all of them. So for those of you twins out there, you probably recognize this as being something that is honest and real. You're individual people, you're different people. You may look alike, you may have some mannerisms that are alike, particularly if you grew up most of your life in a singular household, and you know your parents didn't separate or anything, or you went away to school, or all these things, because that's where I saw the separation of my sons, the true separation, right? Because they were always different people, and we always treated them very differently. They were very independent of one another. But one of the boys, actually, and to hear them say it, the younger by 3 minutes, the younger of the two would go on and become a Marine. He went to Marine Corps boot camp, passed boot camp, became an MP, spent 5 years in the Marine Corps, was married twice. Yep, I'm still working on his relationship, but not going to talk about that. Simply going to say that I'm sure that boot camp, having gone through that, or a similar process anyway, it changes you. It provides additional influences that then alter our intrinsic values, right? Because now we're changed a little bit. We may have honor or integrity or courage or some of these other virtues identified by my Norse ancestors placed in us, right? And we never had a need for that when we were growing up at home. And so the really the thing is, we see the environment changing one, but not both. The other son, whom I love very dearly and has given me 2 of my grandchildren, led a very different life. And so he's had different influential energies influence his trajectory through life. When we look at these men, or if you happen to be twin girls or boy and girl, it's probably more glaringly apparent, but nonetheless, we see a difference in people, even if from a DNA perspective they're identical. Which, you could flip a coin on my sons as to whether, and we never had them tested, so it's not a big importance to us. They're individuals, right? And so even if they like dressing alike and they like playing the part, and I'm sure they got away with the I have no idea what you're asking me for, teacher, because technically I'm the other son, and I'm sure they got away with that. But my point is this speaks very clearly, I think, to how those energies within their lives of their environments now are altering their trajectories. Okay? Now, as I said, we've always treated them as individuals. They've always been their own people. They've dressed their own way. They did their own thing. They were into their own things. And they had different influences, whether those have been spiritual or environmental or some other influence. Nonetheless, they turned out different, right? So this tells us that there is energy abound within all of our existence, both in our home life, in that semblance of peace and order, and in the environments in which we find ourselves throughout our lifetime. Okay? So those influences will change our trajectory, the way we feel about things, the way we think about things, the way we understand things. All of those things can be altered by this minute change at a base level. So, and by the way, not sure if I said this, but maybe I should call it out. Brian, is the asker of this question, and Brian, I understand your perspective. I too, like yourself, was very much growing up my entire life. I grew up in a hard life, I would like to say, and I made some horrible choices along the way, horrible life decisions. Some not so long ago, where I was more interested in right versus wrong, good versus bad kind of thing, and that really got me thinking as to, wait a minute, let's back that up and look more globally at this scenario. What's wrong with this picture? And then I began to put it together, and this is where we're talking about tonight. And we're talking about how does spirituality help our mental health? Well, it helps us to understand the influences that we will have within our lives. Absolutely, hands down, this does not include your on the radio marketing or your on the TV advertising, whatever. Throw that stuff away. That's not even part of the discussion. But you will have spiritual energy influencing your trajectory along the way. Some may fit into your lifetime, and you go, wow, this is really cool. Hey, I like this. I feel good. I'm very positive. I'm very upbeat, whatever the case may be. Life is good, right? And then there are other things that you go, man, I don't know. Do I really want to go that direction? I don't know. In an effort to teach us to deny things, or so that we can see how glorious the other end is, right? So sometimes we go through these dark valleys to provide recognition for the value of the peak at the other end. Those are lessons to learn, and we grow that way, and we evolve that way. And that's really what spirituality should teach us, not how to behave in public. That should have never been part of religion. How to believe, how to act, how to behave, all of those things. That shouldn't be part of your religious doctrine or your ideology. That was a population control that was implemented 2,000 years ago that has absolutely zero bearing on today. Absolutely zero. Very little of it still applies, without speaking to the generalities. The generalities of be nice to your neighbor, of be kind, be loving. Those things are universal, right? That's not, and no surprise. That didn't just magically pop up in everybody's psyche when monotheism came into being, right? That existed before then, right? My ancestors of the Celts spoke of this quite frequently in many of the writings and the drawings and the artistry of that period. By the time we get to the Germanic tribes, they're just wanting to survive. They really don't have time for peace, love, harmony. They're just trying to survive the Roman conquest, or the Frankish conquest, or whoever the latest band of bad guys were, so to speak. The tribe that my ancestors came from was called the Danes. The Danes were actually formed in mid-Germania. Ultimately they would become the Hari tribe of northeastern, what is today Germany. And they would repel the Roman army for many generations, until ultimately the Danes were able to get across the Elbe River into the Jutland of Denmark, where they would march and acquire lands throughout Denmark. My family would ultimately settle in a place called Bjergby, which is 6 kilometers short of the North Sea to the north, and the North Sea to the east, or to the west. Didn't measure how far it is to the east, but I think the North Sea is over there too, because, as you know, Denmark is a peninsula. Anyway, I got derailed here. Ultimately, the idea is that we don't. It's not really an idea of understanding a named individual or a particular practice. When we think about our spirituality and our spiritual journey, remember there are two major players involved in that game. First, it has to make sense in your mind. One of the main things I struggled with the doctrine of Christianity was, where did God come from? Where did God come from? Okay? And everyone kept saying, he just is, he just was, he just always has been. Yeah, no, sorry, ain't buying it. Right? I need something more concrete. I need to know, because this is a foundation that I needed to make sense in my head. And so it wasn't until I left the Christian church and began to experience some psychic channels and psychic trances that I learned where deities came from and how they were actually formed, and then how those formations became us. And so that became real important to me, and that became really a part of what I believed and what I understood, and it made sense to me, right? But then there's a second part that's just equally important, and that is, how do you feel? How does it make you feel? Does it make you feel insignificant? Does it make you feel less than what you should be? If it does, that's probably not the right answer, right? So as I began to embrace my Norse history and legends and understandings, I began to feel at home, like being embraced by grandmother. It was just this warm cuddle with a blanket, and just warm and soft and loving. When I felt that, I knew I was home. I was home. So many people have asked me, well, are you a Viking? And no. Viking's illegal. It's an act that involves violence and crimes against other people, of which I don't participate. I'm Norse. But Norse were so much more than just Vikings. Yes, they did Viking in the summer. Okay. So did everybody else, really. Vikings were just famous for it, right? The Viking era just captured the glory of that age. But everyone else did it too. Everyone else was trying to survive, trying to thrive in a world that wasn't built for that. But the Norse people had more than that. They were loving. They were a warm embrace on a cold winter's night. I mean, that's the best way I can explain the Norse people. And whether you want to say, well, I'm a Norwegian, or I'm a Swede, or I'm an Icelandic, and of course I prefer to call myself a Dane because that's where my family and my ancestry is and came from. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who your culture was. Whether you were Germanic, whether you were Norse, whether you were Egyptian, whether you were Chinese, whether you were the indigenous people of the Australia or the New Zealand, wherever. When we get back to those kind of beliefs where things make sense in our mind and they feel right in our hearts, that's where you begin to find your spiritual journey. Your physical strength and your physical body has absolutely zero to do with anything, right? So if you're receiving a lot of feminine energy at the moment, it doesn't make you feminine. It makes you able to absorb feminine energy. Feminine and masculine is simply a state of energy, whether it's packed super tight or whether it's a little bit looser, thereby allowing us to put emotional energy particles within it. Right? That's it. It doesn't make anything to do with your physical form. Nothing. Right? So, whether you're super powerful or physically or not, that matters very little as well. Remember, makes sense, feels right. It should never feel right to hurt another person. Ever. Ever. It should never feel right or make sense to hurt another person. To hurt another entity. An entity at all. Whether they be human or not. Doesn't make sense. So, Brian, to answer your question, how does spirituality have anything to do with our mental health? I think spirituality has everything to do with our mental health, because as we learn our spirituality, we learn how energy moves from the universe, through our deities, through the other spirits of the land, to us, and back again. And it allows us to then establish control of that energy, to manage it, to actively manage it within the mind. When we can begin to actively manage that energy moving in and out of our mind, we can decide how we feel and when we feel. We can decide what we think and when we think. We get to start making the decisions, and we can take better control. So that's how it affects mental health. All right, my friends. I deeply thankful that you've joined me this evening. I hope that your Wotan's Day is going wonderfully, and I look so forward to seeing you tomorrow morning, where we'll talk about the physical strength of Thor and his abilities that just transcended all of the 9 realms, that he would bring us an example that we could use in our everyday life to make sure that we're on the right track for us. If you're not Brian, for the rest of you, you're not Brian and have a question and want to look at more points or more discussion ideas, by all means, take a look at my website, NorseWhispers.com. There you can find, way down at the bottom, let's see, there you go, that way. To the left is a big orange button that says Ask Me a Question. Pop your question in there. Throw it out there. Let's discuss it. Let's start a dialogue about it. Don't be afraid. I have no ill towards anyone. So I won't destroy or hurt or nothing like that. So please feel confident in knowing that I will put my full heart to whatever question you may have in your mind, And if I do make a show about it, there it is. You'll get yourself one of those shirts that my friend is posing there in. And so, by all means, feel free to reach out, okay? Love and light. I wish you the very best Wootens Day. We will see you again tomorrow when we will discuss Thor and the power of Thor. Love and light, my friends.